Hello, everybody. My name is Nina Lamparski. I am an editor for Agence France Presse in Paris, and I am very delighted to guide you through today's session. By the time it finishes, we will all be older. However, so aging is an inevitable part, of being human. However, how we age will be very different for each and every one of us in this room. We have never lived longer than today, which brings both very exciting opportunities, but also some new challenges. So with the clock ticking, let me introduce my fantastic panel of speakers today, whose work in varying degrees looks at aging successfully. So we have Elisabeth Isele, a global expert on the positive impact of aging. She was also an advisor on senior entrepreneurship to the Obama administration, and she is an associate fellow with Chatham House. Then we have Thomas Jelley, a former lawyer who has spent the last decade working in responsible business and whose focus is also on the future of work. Then we have Fabien Hénaut, the Chief Operating Officer of French startup CetteFamille, which offers an alternative to retirement homes by connecting the elderly with host families. And last but not least, we have Aude, Letty, the Deputy General of the Korian Foundation for Aging. And the Korian Group is one of Europe's leading retirement home chains and also providers of senior healthcare. So please welcome my four panelists. So I'd like to start with you, Elisabeth. You've had a very distinguished and long career, 30 years in publishing. You were an editor, an author. Then today you are one of the top influencers in aging. And my first question to you is, what on earth made you decide to, rather than put your feet up and play golf, to embark on a new career late in life?
Well, first let me say what we should, sorry. One thing we should start with is when we talk about aging, there's a lot of research and information on aging of individuals. There's minimal research on aging of societies. And that's really the core of my work about how societies age and how we can tap into the experience of this demographic to be more successful societies for people of all ages. But let me first say that I really congratulate MoHo for having a session on the experienced economy. Talk about being cutting edge and disruptive. We are disrupting the whole concept of aging. We are turning it from this horrible dependency ratio analysis to one in which older people in our societies are building businesses faster than any other demographic, are returning to the workforce, and they are really our new economic engines. And one thing that I love, my most favorite quote that I apply to this topic is from George Bernard Shaw, who is both a playwright, a creative person, and an economist. And he said, "We don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing." And we must continue to play, whether it's physical activity or mental activity. And that's what's so thrilling to be here at MoHo, because we're playing with ideas and ideas about changing society and aging. So thank you, and thank you all for coming to hear what we have to say on this topic.
Thank you, Elisabeth. I'd still like to know, what was your spark? What was the spark that made you say, actually, this is what I want to do. I want to fight for this. I want to show the world that we are not, an age that we are, like, there's so much potential in senior entrepreneurship.
One of the most revelatory moments was when I was at a college reunion, and a very distinguished digital computer person in Massachusetts came up to me, and we were having a conversation, and I said, "What are you doing?" He was so groundbreaking and cutting in his field. I said, "What are you doing now?" And he pulled his wallet out of his pocket and gradually retrieved a business card that looked like it hadn't seen the light of day in 10 years. And he said, "I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody wants my experience, my work experience, my life experience." And he said, "I really don't know what to do next." And it was like one of those horrible classic light bulb moments where I thought, this is just absurd, just absolutely absurd that we are not tapping into this experience in the working world and in the entrepreneurship world. So then I thought, we just have to do something about changing this.
I'd like to, just a little anecdote, I guess, from you. I think we spoke earlier, and generally, I think in the past, grandchildren going to visit their grandparents, it would probably, they would have cake and tea and bring flowers, and I'd like to just tell the audience what you do with one of your grandsons.
I knew I shouldn't have relayed that story.
Sorry, not sorry.
I've had a wonderful relationship with my grandson ever since he was very tiny. And as he's grown older, our relationship has only evolved. And he's now in college studying computer science. And we always ask each other questions. And so I became incredibly interested in artificial intelligence and how seniors can play a role in moderating and governing bias in artificial intelligence. So I started asking him questions like, what is artificial intelligence? And he just looked at me and he said, you always ask the darndest questions. And I said, but can you tell me just simply what it is? And so he started to explain it. And since then, we've gone back and forth, and he really has given me the background for understanding that first we have to open the black box, and then we have to look at the algorithms and who's programming the algorithms and what comes out of those algorithms. So it's, when I talk about societies, I talk about young people and old people. We're all aging. Retirement is never going to be the same for the younger generation than it was for my parents or my grandparents. And if we can build on catalyzing that kind of experience, his incredibly intense technology, social media experience, with my business sense, my connecting the dots about how to make a better society for all, it's really a beautiful relationship and a very natural relationship. We don't have to, force these kind of issues.
So it's a real sort of example of intergenerational sort of coming together, cooperation. Yes. I'd also like to just say I think it's great that at today's debate we've actually got a very intergenerational panel, which is nice, diverse. Thomas, I will come to you. As I said before, you focus on the future of work. I would like to ask your opinion on what do you think makes the silver economy so powerful today?
Nina, thank you very much. Indeed, a lot of my work today is on the future of work, but my eyes were first opened to today's topic about a decade ago when I was trained to do diversity and inclusion training in the workforce, and that was in the United Kingdom at a time when the debate around the retirement age was rife, whether there should be one, what it should be, whether it should be different for men and for women. And that was my first awakening to this sense really of life trajectory as expressed in and through the workplace. So that really was the starting point. Over the course of time, it's evolved with debates around the dependency ratio, inevitably, but also it's been informed by lots of work around meaning, well-being, purpose, and the notion that as a species we're quite unique in our ability to project ourselves into the future. And you know what it's like when you're very young, or perhaps if you have children, very often you hear the phrase in French, que serai-je quand je serai grand? What will I be? What will I do when I'm older? And we don't stop doing that throughout our lives. We're always projecting and thinking ahead into the future. And so in the context of aging societies, to an extent an inevitability in demographic terms in much of the world, we can lament it, of course, we can regret it, we can be downright miserable about it, or we can accept that in aging societies, for many people, there is silver economy with purpose, with meaning, with contribution, with joy, with activity, which all the things that make life worth living and which make us continue for many, many years to say that little bit further into the future, I will be, I will do, I will enjoy, I will love, I will be part of. So for me, it's very much, for many people in many places today, we can afford to scrap the awe and have both aging societies and silver economies to everyone's benefit.
in terms of the nature of work, you focus on the future of work, so therefore you also know the past of work. I'm interested in knowing how this has changed. So in older people staying in the workforce, how is their experience different today, say, to compare 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Well, let's be very honest and admit that people are staying in the workforce today for a whole host of different reasons. Some people are staying because they can no longer afford to retire, because they either were never able to have the savings, or because their savings were wiped out. There's a whole different host of reasons why people are staying. Many people are staying because they want to, because they enjoy it, because they have the sense of social connection and contribution to it. But I think really in the last 5 or 10 years, we've started to have a different conversation about the life course and inevitably about the work course. Traditionally, it's been quite linear, right? You know, I have education for the first, if I'm lucky, 18 years of my life. If I'm really lucky, for the first 25 years of my life. I then work in a linear fashion and sort of responsibility goes up with salary, and then, whoa, get to a cliff edge and whoomp, it kind of disappears, right? It's very linear. Today, the work course dialogue that I hear seems to be much less linear, perhaps more of a wave, cyclical in some respects, and we're starting to see much more nuance. I'm not just going in one particular direction, I'm going in a direction and I can change paths slightly, and that cliff edge is becoming, I think, a lot more blurred as we really get to the grips with the true potential of today's reality for many people, not everyone, but for many people, which is longer, healthier lives.
Okay, and we'll come back to that in a minute in our ensuing debate. Now, Fabien, you are clearly a long time away from retirement, and so I would...
You never know.
You never know, that's true. You could be a billionaire in the next, 5 years and actually retire, and that's true. But, so it's interesting because my first two speakers are sort of, you are all about being in the workforce, and then we sort of come to the second two speakers, which are sort of what happens after we sort of finally get to retire, at whatever age we decide to retire. Now, I would like to know what made you, as a millennial, decide to sort of work in a domain that deals with elderly people?
Well, it's very selfish. I just don't want to end up in a retirement home. Yeah, really, I'm not sure how many of you would like to end up in a retirement home. Maybe you can raise your hands. If I can count right, that's zero. And I mean, it's all about choice, I don't want to. Some people want to, and they need to, but the retirement home model as we know it today is dead. So it's all about giving choice to people, because there are other ways, and some people, they want to stay at home, but they can't. So you need to help them to find a way to be at home, but maybe at someone else's. And that's what we are doing at CetteFamille, which is a great pun, but also a great business and a great idea and a great operation. It is, we give you the opportunity to keep living at home, but at someone else's. That someone else is a professional, he's got a license from the authorities, and you're going to live in his family, you're going to live your life in his family, be part of this family. You can have almost grandsons, grandchildren, because you're going to be in the family. And that's great, because the challenge that all the people are facing is they can't stay at home, even if they want to, and they are losing the social connection with others, because their sons or their children, they are working. They are somewhere. They are in other places, in other towns, in other countries. So they can't be there every day or every week or every other week. So they just feel lonely, and that's so unfair. And today, the solution we have is to take those people and take them away from the city with a big C, capital C. We kind of hide them. And that's not all right. It's not because you are old that you should be kept away from the city, from civilization, from other people, from society. So we want to help those people keep living with dignity, meet people, talk to people, because you must be able to keep living even if you're old.
So far you've got, I think, about 6,000 places. Is that correct?
Yeah, roughly. We built up a network of family homes You should know there are roughly 15,000 places around France. You won't find one in Paris. It's very much in rural areas. And so roughly 50% of that of those places are registered at CetteFamille. And so we have a call center, and people call us saying, my mom, she lives in Caen. I live in Paris, I can't take care of her. She doesn't want to go to a retirement home because, well, she's healthy, she's not senile, she likes crosswords, she likes to walk around the city, she likes to go to the pub to have drinks with her friends. That happens. How can you help us? How can you help me? How can you help my mom just keep living? And we're going to find a couple of families that would be suitable for her. Maybe she likes dog. We can find a family that has a dog or a cat or a rabbit or whatever. And we're going to do our best to find a good match. That person is going to feel at home, because that's what matters. We're not Airbnb. You're not just calling us or going to an algorithm who's going to find you an apartment or a flat for a weekend. You are calling us to take care of your loved one. So we're not Uber, we're not Airbnb. We are people that have your best interest at heart, and we're going to find the right solution for you.
Okay, well, Aude, I'm going to come to you now. You work for Korian, for the foundation. I'm just going to ask you, do you feel personally attacked by what Fabien has just said? I mean, are your retirement homes that horrible?
Oh, okay. I think, as Fabien said, that 15, 20 years ago, elderly people had no choice. If they could stay at home, well, it was good, but the other alternative was nursing home. And it was a very regulated system where we have yes, a lot of hygiene rules to respect, a lot of medical process. It was very medicalized home. Now there is alternatives like CetteFamille, like assisted living, and home care services increase in France, and we have to rethink the nursing home models. We have to bring more humanity in our homes, and it's a change of mindset that is quite new. Because there was no concurrence before, and that's why we try to put in place new organization focused on the person and more suitable with his rhythm, where the elderly people can be actors. Where they can participate to daily activities, where they can tell what they want, and we try to organize all the day to be yes, suitable with the person really needs.
Since it's interesting what you just said, so basically you said there was no competition before in a way, and now with the emergence of these new models, so it's forcing you, it's holding you more accountable in a way, and also to better yourself in the service that you're providing.
Yes, but I think it's really a good thing. People have different needs. It depends of his dependence. Elderly people must have choice. If it's nursing home, it's nursing home, but it could stay at home. It could go in CetteFamille. I think it's a really good thing, and it obliges us to rethink different model, and that's why we organize research and studies where elderly people are involved, where caregivers are involved, in order to test and evaluate new organization.
Okay, I'd like to now sort of ask a more general question. Thank you for that. I'm a company, I have a lot of money to spend. I can literally hire anybody I want out there. Why would I bother hiring an oldie when I can get fresh hot talent?
You should hire oldie, and it's not just charity. I mean, I can go out, and as you can tell, I speak passionately on this subject, but I can only speak passionately to a certain extent. I have to have the data that demonstrates what I'm talking about is valid. And when you look at businesses and the data that we have found that have an intergenerational workforce, their productivity rate goes up at a minimum of 20%. This is a huge data point. And the oldie in the business is, if you bring an older person into the business, their incredible experience they bring to the table, also their incredible sense of loyalty. They come from a very different business tradition than younger people. What companies don't understand is when they hire the hot, fresh talent right out of school, that hot, fresh talent will stay there maybe 2 years, and then they're not so hot and fresh anymore. And so the companies have to spend a fortune recruiting and training these people. But if you hire the older hot, fresh talent, they will stay longer, and we call them the no drama generation. They come to work and they are not trailing all this drama with them into the workplace. What we have found, one of the most brilliant examples was a 92-year-old woman in California who always wanted to be an engineer. And of course, at 92, when she was in college, they said, that's absurd, study home economics. And the upshot, it's a long story, but it's a beautiful story. And there's a innovation industry in California called IDEO. And IDEO was advertising for help or something in their innovation labs. And she wrote to them because IDEO also has a very special business creating products for seniors. So this woman whose name is Barbara Beskind called them and actually got through to the president and said, do you actually speak to seniors about what you're creating for them? And he said, well, gee, no, we never thought of that. We have all kinds of engineers and experts. But he was smart enough to say, would you like to come in? And Barbara went in and started testing their products for them. And they really lowered the risk level on new product development because Barbara would come in and say, well, this obviously doesn't work. But she extended it even more. And this is when I talk about community and societies. She said, and she did live in a retirement home in Silicon Valley. She said, can I take it back to my friends at the retirement house and see what they think of this product? So IDEO had this incredible new focus group. And the other aspect of it, suddenly these younger people who were being very kind to this older woman, like many of you have been to me at this conference, when she came in, and suddenly they started asking her questions about her life, what she's done. It wasn't just about does this work or not. And they would bring their drama to her, and she's lived a long life of many experiences. And so it's, again, this beautiful intergenerational relationship. And the ultimate victory, I think, for her, and one that we should all be very proud of, and I'm especially an advocate for older women returning to work or starting their own business, is that IDEO permitted her to start designing products that she thought would be most valuable. So at 92 years old, she finally became an engineer. And that, to me, is really one of the most glorious examples of what I'm talking about in businesses and how businesses and people can benefit.
In my corporate life, I quite often get to speak to clients who say, the war for talent is really, really tough. We just can't get the talent we need. We cannot get enough talent. Now, clearly, people of all ages have talent. In simple numerical terms, if we discount a whole bunch of people who have talent just because they are slightly older, and at the same time we run around saying, oh, it's really hard to get talent, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. People of all ages have talent. We cannot assume, we cannot go through life thinking that we're only ever going to be able to attract young talent for whatever reason. We have it throughout our lives, and let's not hoodwink ourselves into thinking that you can only get talent by looking at the younger ends of the labour force.
Excellent. You would touch it. Well, actually, no, I want to ask you straight.
Could I interrupt one
Of
second?
course, interrupt me.
When you
right.
bring up immigrants, it's also very interesting. Again, this is my bias towards older women entrepreneurs. And older women immigrant women are phenomenal entrepreneurs in a way. And the challenge to all of us is we have the stereotypical picture of an entrepreneur. And what we have to focus on and what we do in working with individuals is show them how they've been thinking entrepreneurially all their lives. And they may never identify as an entrepreneur, but that thinking skill is their most valuable asset. And you think of an immigrant, and an older woman immigrant as well as the younger ones, and they come to a new country, and they have to learn a new language, they have to learn a new culture, they have to learn so many things. And they have to be entrepreneurial because they have to hit the ground running. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I didn't want you to discount older immigrants as well. Sorry.
Well, while we're at it, we might as well address the gender gap in the silver economy. I think there's we often talk about, the silver economy isn't just people in the workforce. The silver economy is obviously also, it is the spending power that people have. And it turns out that older people have, well, a section of older people have got a lot of money. A figure I came across from Euromonitor, London-based market research company, they said that in 2010, worldwide spending power, next year that figure is expected to rise to 15 billion. So I got, is it trillion? Oh, it is trillion, yes, sorry. Do you know what I did? I translated it, billion in German is actually trillion in English. There you go, I'm also giving you a free translation class. Sorry about that. It is trillion, obviously. That makes much more sense because that's a much bigger figure. So, but not everyone has got that amount of cash. And I think we have groups within the silver economy that are at a disadvantage. And I'd like to talk about them. Can you sort of maybe address that?
There are groups. I recently came across the OECD's latest Employment Outlook report published only in March of this year. And the reason I was looking into it is because I wanted to look at data on training and understanding what bits of the population get training as part of their work. And this was split through skill levels, education levels, but it was also split through age levels. And I was doing this research in the context of the future of work. And much of the discourse there is about reskilling, upskilling, training, and so forth. And the staggering one that I came across in the OECD's data, this is a 235-odd page report, stacks of fantastic data, 55 to 64-year-olds are 25% less likely to have training at work than 25 to 34-year-olds. So the people who may want to stay in work, the people who, for all sorts of reasons, we need to stay in work, the people who have been longest out of formal education in OECD countries are 25% less likely to get training than 25 to 34-year-olds. To me, that seems nuts. If we're worried about aging societies and we're keen to encourage silver economies.
It's a complete waste of their talent and their ability to learn. It's, and for your gender gap as well, women who have left the workforce to raise a family and then try to re-enter the workforce have enormous barriers to getting back in, nevertheless, to getting training. And the other really criminal thing for these women is that because they left the workforce, their pension levels have just plummeted. So they're really really in an incredibly tenuous position. And that's why there are more women over 50 worldwide starting businesses than any other demographic. And they are fantastic at it, again, because they apply those same skills that they had in child rearing. Our most challenging thing is to convince people that to have the confidence that they can do this. And we talk about our own, I talk about my personal experiences, even with groups that really can't get it. They think they're not an entrepreneur. And I said, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I didn't start my first business till I was 70. And I said, but I had 4 children, and I was a single parent. And every Saturday, those 4 children had some kind of sporting event. And I had to figure out how to get them to those events on time, to get to those different events in all different parts of the town, to pop up and cheer now and then remember to pick them all up. And I said, if you don't think that absolutely it has to have an entrepreneurial mindset. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but as someone said earlier today, if it has to be done, you figure out how to do it, and that's an entrepreneur.
You all live in different places, well, except you both live in France. You are based in Helsinki, you are based in the US. Who does it best? Who has kind of got the best approach to aging, sort of looking after their sort of senior members? I'd like to sort of perhaps ask you in France. It seems that the French market, when it comes to and its approach to the elderly, is changing quite significantly. So I'd like to sort of find out a bit more.
Yes, in France, we have in phase of transition, I think, with new models, and the silver economy in France has a real signification. We have a lot of living lab where elderly people, aged people are involved with startup to think new technologies in order to help them to stay at home as long as possible, in order to improve their quality of life. So I think there is a real dynamic, and if we go to Las Vegas, you know, the big meeting of new technology in Las Vegas. There is the CES, yes. There is a big part with French tech dedicated to silver economy. So I think there is a very good dynamic in France, and new approach like CetteFamille can really give new opportunities for elderly people to have a real choice and a real path care.
So you see, Aude is saying very nice things about you and your business. So I would like to know, where do you see common grounds between the two of you?
We agree on everything, because what I said is
That's
really,
not what you said.
Then you didn't listen well then, because I said that the retirement house model as it is today is dead, and that's the purpose of the Korian Foundation, is to work on the next decades, and how are we going to help all the people to keep living in the coming decades, centuries. So they agree with me. We are on the same line here, and I think that France is pretty good on silver economy and taking care of all the people, because just we have so many, and we are going to have so many in the next years. So we have to be good, because otherwise it's just going to end up on our heads.
The full name of the Fondation Korian hasn't yet been mentioned, but it's the Fondation Korian pour aging well. Right, which is such an important concept, and it's one which, anecdotally, I think I see in Finland. I don't think I've lived in Finland long enough to give a detailed response to how well or not it does it, but anecdotally, when I'm cycling to work or driving around when I'm with my very young children, very often I see two things which suggests to me a culture of bien vieillir, of aging well. The first thing I see people of mature years with Nordic walking sticks, powering down paths and powering down streets. Nordic walking is particularly good because apparently it involves about 70% more cardiovascular exercise with all this sort of business than just walking down the street. So they are going the extra mile to do more exercise and be really physically active, and nobody bats an eyelid. It is completely normal to see a person of quite advanced years power walking, doing their Nordic walking. The second thing I see, and if you tend to get chilly, I recommend that you pull your jacket up at this point. I've spent just one winter living in Finland, and so often when I've been wearing 5 layers, including down, including Gore-Tex, including the base layer, and I've been at the beach, if there's a little jetty, a little pontoon, invariably, I will see, and it usually is a woman of a very certain age, in a dressing gown, wearing rubber shoes, rubber gloves, and a hat, walk to the end of the jetty, take off her dressing gown, and in a hole in the sea ice, you guess what's coming, she will very gently step down the ladder into the sea, bob around, take a few strokes, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, climb back out again, put her dressing gown back on. She doesn't run back to the land. She walks back to the land completely in control. As anecdotal evidence of a kind of culture or determination of aging well, that's been hugely inspiring to me, to my wife, and I expect also to my children.
Sounds very cold too, though, still. But so, unfortunately, I had so many more questions, but the time is running away. There are so many more topics we haven't touched upon, such as the aging populations in Europe and the US versus a young population boom in other places. But I'm afraid if I open that can, we won't be able to close it on time. So I'd rather open the floor to you for the next 5 minutes and just see if you've got any questions to our fabulous panelists. I can see Marlo. I'm afraid I know Marlo. I think it's going to be... No, you cannot, Jürgen.
Thank you. I received last week a dear colleague letter from the Human Resources Department of my company inviting me to open discussions with them about a buyout, essentially. I'm one of the situations that Thomas elaborated, which is I can't afford to even consider it, so it went into the trash. But my question is, and I see clearly why a company would be motivated to do that, because as soon as I can retire, they can hire 2 people at what they're paying me at entry-level salaries. In terms of what you focus on, is it better or is it as important to try and change that or prolong convince companies either through regulation or otherwise to keep the people they have on staff longer? Or do you think it's better or more productive, more useful to focus the energies in what you're doing on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th careers of helping people who do retire to move on to something else?
I think it's both. I think and I say that because we work both with individuals and with companies and with governments. And with companies, we have to have those data points that demonstrate to them the economic value of keeping you on and being able to tap into your experience and contrasting it to what it would take to hire and train new people who have that constant turnover. And but I think it also is from the individual perspective, it's a time for you to really determine what you want to do next. Do you want to stay in that position? And if you do, to be able to make the argument in the data that's out there that shows your economic value to that company in terms of productivity and retention in the workforce. But I always look at things as an opportunity, and it's an opportunity for you to say, well, is there something else I'd like to be doing? And what do I need to be able to do that? So that's why I say this is a time of opportunity. This is not a silver tsunami. We say silver economy for a reason, because it is game-changing in terms of economies locally and globally. How would you recommend?
It depends. We have one more question, or we... Yes, okay, you can... So, yes, we've got like a couple of more minutes left.
Hi, you all make a very convincing case for companies to dip into experienced workers, to maybe temper the excesses of the young and hot economy, as you said, Elizabeth, maybe in artificial intelligence, and that come through in experience. Now, I wonder whether you would push that further and maybe say, why wait for companies to see the light and hire us or keep us on? Why don't we just get together and create our own companies with the tools of the new economy, flip it round, or not saying against them, but in a way use those tools and kick ass on our own. And that's and the second question, sub question to that, is there any scope for maybe public policy to make that possible? Could there be like money coming, grants coming, tax breaks? Is that something that's even being considered as far as you know?
In different countries, it varies country by country. And in the United States, for example, we try to get the government to change their unemployment benefits, which is essentially just charity for people looking for a job that doesn't exist, to help them invest seed money and training in starting their own businesses. And I think if you look at the data that's out there, to your point about why not start your own business, 25% of entrepreneurs worldwide are over 50. And those over 50 starting a business with their experience, their business is still in business 5 years out, whereas a young person's business is optimally 2 years still in business. You too can form your own. Sorry.
A quick final word.
Jürgen, what I would love to see most is some innovative mechanism to allow us all to indulge in training throughout our lives, not just in the first quarter century, not just when we're about to reach retirement, but I would love some mechanism to make it possible for us to dip in and out of training throughout the life course, to make the cliff edge redundant, and to make it possible for us to exercise the variety of choices which we see so vividly in the examples that Elizabeth is giving us.
So that's all we have time for. I would like you to all to please applaud my fantastic panelists.